I sought the Lord, and He answered me and delivered me
Hi, everybody. This is
from
Gary again with
every
Timeless. And this is something really special because it's about people you should know and know their story. Now, this is a really simple podcast about people. And my hope is that you'll always take away something for your home, your ministry, your life, most of all. And this version of Timeless is this one I've just said about people you should know and know their story. And today we have a fantastic guest. And her name is Mary Polansky. And let's get started right away, Mary. Hi,
Hi,
how are you doing today?
I'm good.
Are you
Thank
enjoying
you.
the sun?
Very well.
The sun is out and the
Yes.
snow is melting a little
Yes, when
bit.
it comes out.
You got the window, so
Yes.
that's great.
Yes.
Well, Mary,
Yeah.
what I always ask this question of everybody
Yes.
because it's kind of a fun one, but what gets you up in the morning? What makes you get out of bed?
Well, when I get out of bed, I'm always very grateful and thankful for all that God has done for my family, for me. And that gratefulness and thankfulness has been there for quite a while now, as I've seen God work in our lives. And um, I get up because I have to, but when I'm up, I just look outside and I just thank God for all that He has done.
Wow, that's really beautiful. So, Mary, tell us about yourself a little bit. A little background into your life growing up, where you grew up, and right up to present if you can. Okay, just a
Okay,
couple minutes.
sure. My dad was a pastor, so we kind of moved from church to church. I was born in Indiana, grew up there until about I was 10, but that's where I accepted Christ into my heart as a little 5-year-old. And
Wow.
I understood exactly what I was doing. I didn't want to go to hell, so I asked Jesus into my heart, and then I just grew from there.
Yeah.
Um, Ended up in central Wisconsin until I came to college here in Chicago.
Okay.
Until I came to Moody.
Wait to Moody. That's a great
Yeah.
place.
hmm
Great place. And when from Moody, where did you go from there?
Well, I went on to Chicago Musical College of Roosevelt University and majored in piano to supposedly to finish my bachelor's degree. I didn't quite do that because Moody at the time just had a 3-year program
Right.
and you got a diploma.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where
So
I went on.
yeah. How about your family? What give us a little insight into your family background too?
Okay. You mean my parents?
Yeah, well, your parents and then your own family. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I met my husband at Chicago Musical College.
Wow.
Yeah, in the music theory class, and he was so much better at it than I was. So that's where we met, and eventually we got married. And then I dropped out of school for a while, but we lived here in the Chicago area, and he taught music
Okay.
until he became ill,
Okay.
and he died rather young. So,
Wow. I'm
so
sorry.
we have 2 children. We also had 3 foster teenage boys for about 7 years, and that was a real adventure.
Wow, I
Um,
did not know that about you, but I would guess
yeah,
that you would be that kind of person.
yeah,
So that's very, very cool. So
yeah.
tell us about your kids.
My kids are grown now. They're both in full-time ministry. My daughter from here runs a children's home for girls, for trafficked and abused girls in the Philippines.
Wow.
She and her husband were missionaries there for many years. And my son is in full-time ministry, working with prisoners, both juveniles and young men older than that, with Youth for Christ. And then he started his own ministry,
Wow.
Created for More.
Wow. That's
And he
very
does wilderness trips in the summer for them, and which he trained for at Wheaton College.
wow. Yeah, you could get great training at Wheaton College. Of course,
Yeah,
Honey Rock and
right.
all of that is phenomenal
Yes. Oh
background
yeah.
that moves that
Yes.
along.
That was his favorite place. Yeah,
So
where God really worked on his heart.
so I'm really interested in the foster children that you had.
Yes.
And,
Uh-huh.
what made you decide to go that route?
Well, my husband loved teenagers, and he was a rather new Christian when we got really involved in our church. And we were challenged by some friends in the church to take in foster teenagers because it was such a need. And we thought, well, why not? And the parents used to tell us, well, you don't know what it's like to live with teenagers because you have little kids, and our kids were very little then. So we decided to apply for that. We had space in our home, and that's how we got started.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
Have you followed through with them over the years, these children who were in your home at this
Yes.
point?
Well, yes, they're adults, and the two boys who are alive live in Colorado. They're brothers,
Okay.
and they're doing okay. The other one that we were the closest to, Rod, was killed in a motorcycle accident.
Ooh,
He
wow.
was drinking and high on drugs. So, and he had already moved out then. He was 19 or 20. They usually stay in your home until about 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was very hard on my son because he loved Rod. They were
Wow.
like brothers. So
Wow. Well, I know,
yeah.
I know. So I first met you 100 years, not 100 years ago, 21 years ago, many years ago at Wheaton College. And as I walked into the president's office, I said, "Oh, hi." And I fast forward, we decided we were going to the same church. We didn't even know it. And
Yeah,
so
right, right.
Jacqueline and I have followed you through that. But talk a little bit
Mhm.
about your career, music career, a bit, and then what happened after college. You said you dropped out a little bit, but you were always
Uh-huh.
interested in music. And then what did you do?
Well, we just raised my family, and when the kids were in grade school, then I looked for a job with benefits and whatever, and I went to Wheaton College. And I had training for administrative assistant, that type of work in high school. So I applied for that, and I just stayed in that full time. And then as my husband became ill and died, I needed to move up, and I moved up to the president's office.
Wow. So
So
20,
that was to keep a roof over our heads, but I always felt my passion and my main focus was on my children.
yes. Well, I
Yeah.
can tell that you're very much a people person. Jacqueline
Yes.
and I follow you around the church sometimes, and we just are amazed at all the things you do. And you're still involved with children.
Yes. Oh
Tell
yeah.
tell us right
Mhm.
now how that's going.
Um, well, normally I'm in Promised Land, but right now, or Willow Kids, but right now I'm bringing my neighbor to church at 11, so I'm just taking a little hiatus so I can be with her. But I do tutor at the Wheaton Outreach Center 2 days a week, and I love that. I just love being with children, and then I babysit my grandchildren often
Wow.
when
Well,
needed.
we didn't talk about your grandchildren. How many grandchildren do you
I have 5
have?
total.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. And they're
But
around.
two are in the area,
Okay.
so those are the two that I watch.
What fun. Grandchildren are
Yes,
so much fun.
they are.
We
Yes.
have, Jacqueline and I have 8 of them, and we just
Oh
are,
wow.
and they're all at different ages. One is almost going to be 2, and the other one is almost 21. So big
Wow.
span of all that. So yeah, grandchildren are wonderful. Mary, tell us,
Hmm.
you started to tell us a little bit about your faith story, and
Uh-huh.
you said you were 5, and
Hmm.
I was 5 in my church home. At that time, a Baptist church in Rockford, Illinois. And I remember sitting in a circle and singing, come into my heart, Lord Jesus, come in today, come into today,
Yes.
my heart, Lord Jesus. And I really meant it at that point, although I didn't really get connected fully to that till in my late teenage years. But
Yeah.
you said right away, I really meant it. And I knew something had happened. Talk about from 5 on up and how that has progressed and your journey of faith, of knowing Jesus.
Well, both of my parents were very evangelical, and my mom used to teach a children's program through Child Evangelism Fellowship. And so, of course, we were involved in that. So I grew in my faith that way. They taught us, my parents taught me everything spiritual that I learned growing up. And then, of course, I was involved in the church Sunday school, and then the youth group, and then any outreach ministries that we could do as teenagers I was involved in.
Wow. That's
So we were in the
fantastic.
country, so there weren't as many opportunities as there are here in
Okay,
the
now
suburbs.
you're talking about Indiana now, or where were you living?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
What a great
Yes.
place. So,
Yes.
what have been some hard times in your faith journey? Tell us a
Oh,
little bit about that.
yeah. Well, first of all, with my husband being very, very ill, and we didn't know what was wrong for almost a year, and I just watched him go down, and that was very difficult. And then he died at 49. He had pancreatic cancer,
Wow.
and that was hard on my children. And after he died, I found out what a mess my son was in.
Mm,
He was like a freshman in high school, freshman or sophomore, wasn't going to school, was on drugs, was, in a real mess. And so that was my major focus for the next 10 years,
wow.
helping him to, because I was hoping to go back to school and finish a degree in like early childhood education, because I really did want to work with children, but I needed to just leave that alone and focus on my son until
Yeah.
he
Wow.
till he
So
came back.
I think some people would like to know how you did that. Some people are maybe listening to this, will be listening to
Yeah.
this, who are in the same boat and worried about their kids and don't know what to do. What did you
Yeah.
do besides pray a lot, I bet?
Oh yes. That's where I just learned. I would be on my knees night and day. And as I saw God working in his life and slowly changing his heart, that's where I learned the gratefulness and thankfulness that I just automatically do every day. I'm just so grateful and thankful.
Yeah.
But I had friends at Wheaton College, friends at the church we were at the time, which was First Baptist Church in Wheaton, who just prayed and prayed and supported me. A couple of men at Wheaton College took him on. Don Church got him into the carpenter shop, and Dave Heidel took over from there and mentored him for a long time. And then he still wasn't doing well, and we knew we needed to get him out of here. So I sent him up to Honey Rock, and whether he wanted to go or not, he was going. So, and I also insisted that we go to church every Sunday. He wouldn't go to First Baptist. So I said, well, then we're going to Willow Creek, because you can kind of get lost in the balcony there if you need to. And so he did. I said, as long as you're living in my house, we're going to church. And he heard Lee Strobel. He really liked Lee Strobel. Lee spoke to his heart a lot,
Wow.
just because of his testimony of being angry and not, being an atheist. So, but with the mentoring that he received, and then when he went up to Honey Rock, the first trip wasn't that great, but he went back because they had a farm at the time, and they baled hay and all that outdoor stuff, which he loves. And then there was another man up there, Mark Pat, I forgot his name, but he took Derek under his wing, and so did another gentleman who taught the wilderness trips, and they just spent time with him. They taught him how to hunt deer. They helped him, catch a deer and clean it and all that, and that just got his heart. And then eventually one day he said he was driving down the road in a truck, and then he just told God, I give up. I'm not going to fight you anymore. But he was out in God's country and away from the friends down here that influenced him. And but I did pray night and day.
Wow, Mary. Wow. What a
Yeah.
story. What a story. Um, you know, when I see you around, you always seem to have a pretty good attitude, smile, joyful person.
Yeah. Yes.
So that was kind of the low time in your life, your husband dying and your
Yep.
son coming back to health and to Jesus. Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
what's one time that you can think of there that you've really experienced the joy of the Lord? And when was that and where did that happen? Can you remember that?
Um, well, you know, yes, when my son was doing so much better, it was just a joy to get up in the morning, and, I just praised God every morning. And going to church, I mean, I love Willow Creek. I love the worship. That's just joy for me. I'm hoping to have more joy this summer as I go on some trips that I've been hoping to do, but COVID took that away. So I'm planning to go to Israel and Egypt this later this year with a group of people, and then to Alaska with David Jeremiah on a cruise,
Wow.
and that'll be fun. There hasn't been that much joy just because I've had to do it alone for a
Yep.
long time.
Yep. That's a tough road sometimes.
Yeah.
And David
Mhm.
Jeremiah's trip, I've heard about that, and I hear they're
Have you?
phenomenal too. That he
Yeah.
does that kind of stuff. So as you think of your life going forward, I know you sound like you have some things you're looking forward to do, but when you think of the Christian life and calling other people to Jesus, um, I know that one of the big things about someone like you is you are just a worker. You are just
Yes.
after
Yes.
it all the time, a real servant leader. Um, how do you feel about your life in terms of witness when you think of that? Um, I know that you and I've talked a little bit in the past. Well, we've talked a lot at different times and then in the
Mhm.
narthex of the church and so on. But when you think of sharing your faith, what does that mean to you, and how do you do that best?
I share my faith probably more in action first, and then I do verbalize it with my neighbors. I'm thinking especially my neighbors. This neighbor who's coming to church with me um, is an alcoholic, and she was kind of drinking herself to death
Wow.
and falling up in her place. And somebody made me aware that that was happening. So I said, well, I can't just let her lay there and not help. So I went up there, and it started a whole long procedure of helping her and bringing her back to health.
Wow.
But it was such a witness to her of God's love that she's anxious to come to church. She wants to hear more. And I'm happy to even share my faith with her. I haven't had that opportunity yet, but
Well,
in my neighborhood,
yeah.
it's more what I do every day.
It
Just
sounds like you have, though. I mean,
yeah,
just by what you said, your actions come
yes,
sometimes speak
yeah,
louder than any words. And
yeah,
Jesus, a lot of times, very whimsical and silent on things, and yet
yeah.
spoke
Hmm.
volumes. And
What? Yeah, and learning to love others just the way they are,
yeah,
right where they are,
yeah,
like the woman at the well, and just accepting my neighbor right where she was, because I knew her history here, and it was not good because of her involvement in alcohol and drugs. But I had to just lay that aside and just love her like God loves her,
well,
and just be a friend.
yeah, that's a great story. And Mary,
Yeah.
thank you so much for doing this today. I'm going to let you have the last word right there, but what would you say to someone who's considering following Jesus, but they're just kind of hesitant? They have not really taken the step. What would you have a word for them today that you would just challenge them with?
Well, there's no greater love than someone giving his or her life for you, and that's what Jesus has done. He's given his life, he's given his everything for you because he loves you so much. And what better thing can you do than to love him back and just give your life to him and let him come in and make you a new person?
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. That's the gospel, you know.
Right. Hmm.
Um, it's not just God and love others and change the world, but that's important too. But I think this whole thing that you have just said. Thank you so much again, Mary, and I'm so grateful that you did this today. And
Hmm.
again, we'll see you soon. All
See you
right.
at church.
Yeah.
Yeah. All righty. Okay. Thank you.
I sought the Lord, and He answered me and delivered